all the foods I love are bad for you, and I gained a lot of weight, but I couldn't stand it. I hated myself and everybody else. I was that heavy. So I just had to get my weight down. I did everything to get the weight under control.
For decades, Dolly Parton has dazzled the world with her charm, talent, and unforgettable voice. But behind the glitz and glamour, the country legend was hiding a shocking secret. New revelations suggest that for over 30 years, Dolly lived a double life, one that even her closest friends and fans never suspected. First time I was ever here was, I guess it was in the late 60s, early 70s, and I had just started making in country music. From hidden relationships to secret projects kept out of the spotlight, the truth is more unbelievable than fiction. But what was Dolly really hiding all these years? Today we uncover the stunning truth behind her secret life. The woman the world never truly saw. For more than half a century, Dolly Parton stood beneath the bright glare of the spotlight, shimmering in sequins and smiles. Her rhinestone-covered gowns dazzled audiences across the world, and her laughter seemed to dance effortlessly between stages, interviews, and award shows. But what could possibly lie beneath all that sparkle? Who was the woman when the lights went out and the cameras stopped rolling? For decades, Dolly's image had been larger than life. Blonde wigs piled high, lips painted perfectly, and her unmistakable charm radiating through every gesture. Yet behind that radiant persona was another Dolly, one that few ever met. The truth, long whispered in fan circles and hinted at in biographies, finally surfaced in 2025 with her candid book and the release of her long-awaited rockstar album. In a series of interviews that followed, she made a confession that stunned even her most devoted followers. The Dolly Parton the world knew was, in her words, a ventriloquist dummy. It wasn't deception, it was defense. Dolly explained that she had built this dazzling version of herself as a kind of shield, a carefully crafted creation that allowed her to survive in an industry that often demanded perfection while punishing authenticity. The wigs, the makeup, the sparkle, they weren't only part of her brand. They were armor. Beneath the rhinestones lived a woman quietly fighting to protect her peace, her privacy, and her music of self. Close friends and biographers confirmed what many had suspected but never dared to say. Dolly had spent her life balancing two identities. One belonged to the world, the smiling star, endlessly giving, adored by millions. The other belonged only to herself, quiet, thoughtful, often retreating into moments of solitude far away from the noise of fame. Her longtime friend once described it as two worlds stacked on top of each other, one made of glitter, the other of silence. She admitted she would even sleep with her makeup on, sometimes waking at 3 a.m. to retouch it before dawn. It wasn't vanity. It was a ritual of separation, the mask that kept her public life from bleeding into her private one. The world adored the performer, but the woman behind her had to build walls to survive the weight of expectation. When a strange rumor began to circulate online, a theory comparing her to a real-life Hannah Montana, secretly blending into the public unnoticed by disguising herself without the wigs and makeup, Dolly's answer was teasing yet telling. "That could be true," she said with a knowing smile. Beneath the humor was a subtle truth. Dolly's double life wasn't born out of deceit, but out of necessity. It was how she stayed grounded, how she managed to keep a small piece of herself untouched by fame's relentless demands. And in 2025, for the first time, both worlds collided. On stage, under the glittering lights, stood the Dolly the world adored. But off stage, in her words, her honesty, her stripped-back reflections, we finally glimpsed the woman who had been hiding in plain sight all along. The world saw the sparkle, but only now was it beginning to see the soul behind it. But what happens when the glitter fades? When the mask finally slips to reveal the woman beneath the myth? Stay glued. The marks beneath the glitter. Long before 2025, whispers had followed Dolly Parton wherever she went. Not just about her music or her signature sparkle, but about what lay hidden beneath her famous long sleeves. For decades, the rumors floated through fan circles and late-night interviews. Did Dolly Parton, America's sweetheart of country music, secretly wear tattoos? Some imagined wild full-sleeve designs, fiery and bold, stretching from wrist to shoulder. Others believed it was part of her mystery, a deliberate piece of the legend she had so carefully built. But the truth, as always with Dolly, was far more human and far more moving. In 2025, as she opened up more than ever before through interviews and her revealing book, the mystery finally settled. Yes, Dolly confirmed she does have tattoos, but they are nothing like the ones fans pictured. There were no bold statements, no rebellious slogans. Music, no dark, edgy ink meant to shock. Instead, her tattoos were gentle, painted in soft pastel colors, each one serving a quiet, private purpose. They were not for fashion. They were for healing. Over the years, Dolly had endured her share of medical challenges, including procedures that left behind scars and reminders of pain. One scar in particular, caused by a feeding tube, had left a lasting mark on her body. Rather than cover it with makeup or hide it in shame, she transformed it into art, adorning it with small, delicate designs. Butterflies, ribbons, bows, even music, a tiny beehive. Each tattoo turned something she once saw as damage into something beautiful. Her fair skin, known for forming keloid scars, raised in uneven marks that often appear purple, inspired her to find a creative solution that blended both concealment and expression. Those who caught rare glimpses of her secret artwork described it as unexpectedly soft and deeply meaningful. British comedian Jennifer Saunders once admitted to seeing the tattoos on Dolly's chest and underarms, calling them tiny works of art. She described images of angels, flower boxes, and light pastel shapes that seemed more like whispers than declarations. Years earlier, actress Roseanne Barr had also confirmed Dolly's body art, giving more credibility to what had long been dismissed as gossip. Yet, despite the growing curiosity, Dolly herself never flaunted her tattoos. She never turned them into a trend or a brand. "I'm not a tattoo girl," she once said, smiling in that familiar way that made you wonder what she wasn't saying. She preferred to keep them private, occasionally revealing them beneath sheer fabrics or in the rare, honest moment when she chose to share her truth. By 2025, the fascination wasn't about the tattoos themselves. It was about what they represented. They weren't symbols of rebellion or vanity. They were symbols of transformation. Each design carried a story of pain turned into purpose, scars turned into strength. They revealed the side of Dolly Parton that the world rarely saw. Not the legend wrapped in rhinestones, but the woman who learned to turn her wounds into beauty. And perhaps that was the real secret all along. The one she had been quietly living with for years, hidden beneath glittering sleeves and a smile that never faded, even when it hurt to wear it. The sparkle was what the world noticed. But beneath it, the ink told the story of a survivor who never needed to shout to be powerful. And what if the real magic behind Dolly's shine wasn't fame at all, but pain disguised as grace and quiet strength? Keep watching the secret heart of her legacy under the bright lights of the stage. Dolly Parton has always appeared larger than life, a glittering vision of sequins, laughter, and songs that never seemed to fade. But what most people never realized was that her greatest acts, music of brilliance, didn't always happen under the spotlight. They unfolded quietly, far from cameras where no applause could reach. For Dolly, kindness was never a performance. It was a way of living. And while her fame built stages, her heart built something far more lasting. Compassion that reached places fame never could. By 2025, the true scale of Dolly's generosity had begun to surface, and it told a story far more profound than any award or hit record. Through her Dollywood Foundation, she had poured millions into causes that transformed lives, from education and healthcare to crisis relief and community rebuilding. Her Imagination Library, one of her proudest creations, began as a small dream to help children in her home county of Sevier, Tennessee. It has since grown into a global movement, operating in over 1,800 towns across 5 countries, delivering more than 270 million free books to children under the age of 5. What started as a single act of hope became one of the most impactful literacy programs in the world. But books were only one chapter of her silent crusade. Dolly's compassion was most visible during times of tragedy, though she never sought credit for it. When the devastating Gatlinburg fires tore through Tennessee in 2016, leaving families homeless and broken, Dolly stepped in without hesitation. She quietly donated $12.5 million to victims, enough to rebuild not only homes, but faith in humanity. When the East Tennessee flood struck in 2024, she did it again, offering $1 million to ease the pain of those who had lost everything. And during the dark days of the COVID-19 pandemic, her $1 million gift to Vanderbilt University Medical Center helped speed up the research behind one of the first vaccines, a gesture that rippled across the world and earned her universal admiration. Yet, despite such massive impact, Dolly has always resisted the label of a savior. She insists, music, she's just doing what's right, often giving anonymously or under the radar. There are countless stories, small, nearly invisible moments that reveal the real depth of her generosity. Like the time she paid for new band uniforms at a predominantly black high school, or when she quietly covered full college tuition for Dollywood employees who wanted a better future. Her buddy program designed to pair students and encourage teamwork dramatically reduced dropout rates in Xavier County. Each idea was music, rooted not in publicity, but in personal connection and the belief that one act of care could ripple into countless others. By 2025, experts called her approach a model for celebrity philanthropy. But Dolly herself would never use those words. She has always said that giving isn't about attention. It's about understanding what people need most: dignity, hope, and a fair chance. Her kindness doesn't just comfort. It changes people. It reminds the world that greatness isn't measured by how loudly you shine, but by how quietly you lift others. And maybe that was Dolly's real double life all along. Not the woman who wore rhinestones by day and hid her scars by night, but the one who gave away her light so others could find their own. But what if Dolly's greatest secret wasn't her fame or her pain, but the quiet power behind it all? The man who chose the shadows. For nearly 6 decades, while the world watched Dolly Parton light up stages and red carpets, one man quietly stood behind the curtain. The man who knew her before the wigs, before the rhinestones, before the world claimed her. His name was Carl Dean, and though his marriage to one of the most recognizable women on the planet made him part of pop culture legend, Carl himself remained one of its most enduring mysteries. When he passed away in March 2025 at the age of 82, fans around the world were reminded that some of the greatest love stories are not the loudest, but the most steadfast. Carl Dean never sought the glare of the spotlight. In a world built on constant exposure, his silence became its own kind of statement. He rarely appeared in public with Dolly, refused to attend red carpet events, and turned down countless interviews that could have made him a household name. To outsiders, his absence seemed puzzling, even cold. But to those who truly understood him, it was a quiet declaration of who he was. A man completely at peace with staying unseen. Dolly once shared during a 2023 Apple Music interview that early in their marriage, Carl attended one industry event with her. Afterward, he looked her in the eye and said, "Don't ever ask me to go to another one of these damn things." That single moment, delivered with love and humor, defined the rhythm of their partnership. Dolly loved the lights. Carl preferred the shadows. And somehow that contrast became their harmony. Their marriage thrived not on constant togetherness, but on mutual respect and understanding. Dolly often joked, "I stay gone. That's why we last." But behind the laughter was truth. Their distance wasn't separation. It was balance. While Dolly gave herself to the public, Carl gave her a place to return, a stillness no applause could match. He was the quiet to her noise, the calm to her storm. In her emotional 2025 tribute, Dolly described him as her anchor, the steady force that held her through chaos. "He chose me over the world I lived in," she wrote, capturing the essence of a man who never wanted fame to define his worth. His love was not performative. It was protective. While the world demanded more of her, he demanded nothing. He let her be both the star and the woman, never forcing her to choose between them. Their love story quietly challenged the modern myth that visibility equals value. Caroline proved that devotion doesn't need validation, and that real strength often speaks in silence. There are no grand photos, no lavish interviews, No carefully staged moments of affection between them. And that is precisely what made it powerful. His presence was invisible but deeply felt, shaping the woman who shaped an era. By the time the world said goodbye to Carl in 2025, it wasn't the absence of his voice that echoed. It was the depth of his influence. His quiet loyalty helped build one of music's most unshakable legacies. He didn't stand in Dolly's light. He became the shadow that made it shine brighter. And in that stillness, in that unwavering love that asked for nothing and gave everything, Carl Dean became proof that sometimes the greatest power doesn't belong to those who are seen, but to those who choose not to be. But what if it wasn't fame or fortune that defined her, but the scars, choices, and storms that shaped her soul? Stay with us. The price of being two people. Dolly Parton's double life wasn't born from guilt or deceit. It was her way to survive. It wasn't about hiding sins, but about protecting music, the fragile line between the woman the world adored and the woman only a few truly knew. Her songs have always reflected that tension. On one unforgettable night in 1973, she wrote two music of her greatest hits, Jolene and I Will Always Love You. One revealed the sting of jealousy and temptation. The other the ache of loving someone enough to let them go. To express such opposite emotions in a single sitting showed the depth of her inner world. Dolly wasn't just writing, she was living those songs. As her fame grew, separating those two worlds, music became not only intentional but essential. Fans saw her as a glittering icon wrapped in sequins and Southern charm. But behind that sparkle stood a brilliant strategist quietly building one of the most successful business empires in entertainment. Dollywood. Her Tennessee theme park may appear to be just rides and cinnamon bread, but beneath it lies a network of carefully music-crafted ventures. Dolly owns multiple companies under the Dollywood brand, controls her publishing rights, and invests smartly in media, hospitality, and entertainment. Still, she rarely calls herself a businesswoman. She hides her sharp mind behind that disarming, just a country girl charm. Her wigs and rhinestones weren't just decoration. They were armor. They let her move seamlessly between boardrooms and stages, negotiating multi-million-dollar deals in the morning and lighting up an audience by night. That was her double life, the adored sweetheart and the calculating CEO in one frame. Her generosity formed another layer of that duality. In 1995, she launched the Imagination Library, which has since mailed over 200 million free books to children around the world. She's donated millions to hospitals, scholarships, and famously gave $1 million to Vanderbilt University to fund COVID-19 vaccine research. But even in her giving, Dolly downplayed her role. I just think it's important to give back if you've been blessed. She said what many saw as spontaneous kindness was for Dolly deeply personal, a tribute to her faith and to the poverty that shaped her. By the 1980s and 90s, Dolly's life ran on two tracks. One dazzlingly public, the other fiercely private. To the outside world, she was tireless, performing, smiling, radiating joy. But behind closed doors, she guarded music, her peace, her marriage, and her sanity. Why keep them separate for so long? Because fame can devour what it cannot. Music control. Dolly understood that early. By giving fans a glittering version of herself to love, she protected music, the real one, from being consumed. It wasn't deception, it was survival. Gender also played its role. When Dolly entered country music in the 1960s, women were expected to be soft and submissive. She refused to shrink. Instead, she exaggerated everything: the hair, the humor, the curves. By turning herself into a larger-than-life figure, she took control of her own narrative. When critics mocked her looks, she laughed first. Every wig and wink was her way of saying, "You don't get to write my story." And beneath all the sparkle was control, the cornerstone of her double life. Dolly wasn't just a performer. She was a creator who made sure to own her art. When Whitney Houston's version of I Will Always Love You became one of the best-selling singles of all time, it was Dolly's ownership of her publishing rights that earned her millions. She had been playing chess while everyone thought she was playing checkers. But such mastery came with a cost. Rumors followed her everywhere about her marriage to Carl Dean, her friendships, her sexuality. Dolly deflected them with humor, saying, "If they're talking about me, at least they're leaving someone else alone." Still, the constant scrutiny took its toll. Behind the laughter, cracks sometimes appeared. In her 1994 autobiography, My Life and Other Unfinished Business, Dolly admitted she had battled depression and even experienced thoughts of ending her life in the 1980s. Her glittering smile had often masked exhaustion, loneliness, and pain. Her double life then wasn't a mask. It was a masterpiece. It allowed her to stay whole in an industry that tears people apart. On stage, she gave everything music the world demanded. Off stage, she reclaimed everything she needed to survive. One life to inspire millions and another to quietly keep herself alive. For 30 years, Dolly walked that tightrope with astonishing grace. But even the steadiest performer trembles now and then. There were moments when the private Dolly peeked through the rhinestones, when grief, fatigue, or truth dulled the sparkle for just a second. Yet she never fell, because behind the laughter and light stood a woman who had learned the hardest truth of all. To endure fame, sometimes you must live in two worlds, even when neither ever feels entirely your own. So, what do you think truly drove Dolly Parton to live two lives for over 3 decades? Fame, fear, or something far deeper? Share your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.